All right. I'll give a quick overview how this webinar looks like. Also introduction to TCA team. Thanks again. My name is Venkat Tuma. I'm one of the BOD for the current TCA team. So we have 4 tax professionals in this webinar. Mr. Matthews Chako, Guru Dorosala, Manohar Sriramneni, and Chandrakala Sivaya. All are tax professionals with CPA and doing within Austin community. Manohar Garu is one new to Austin. The rest 3 are well known to most of our community. I'll briefly explain our agenda. So introduction to TCA team and introduction to our tax profession, I think I did already. And topic presented by each professional, live Q&A. And at the last, we have some TCA helpline and donation opportunity slide. Should not take that much of time. Quickly go to the first topic. This is our current committee. We have executive committee and 3 BODs. So most of the team is present. President is Brahma Lakku, is in the call, and also secretary and treasurer, and all of the executive committees. Also, we have our other senior board of director, Mr. Sivanamala, is also in this call. Thank you for this opportunity for presenting this webinar to the Austin Telugu community, and also we have others too. Thanks again for joining. Quickly, this is all possible with our current TCA sponsors. We have many from different backgrounds, from real estate to healthcare, and also food industry. And all our current tax professionals in this panel also our sponsors. So one more thanks again for contributing to the TCA community. So these 4 professions we have. Mr. Matthews Chako represents Matthews CPA Inc. And Guru Garu, my tax filer, and Manohar Garu, my tax links, and Chandra tax service from Chandrakala Garu. So these each topic provided by one professional, starting with Matthews Chako Garu with the stimulus package. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share slides from Mr. Matthews. So he will take over and explaining what's going on with this. So we have a live Q&A after all 4 are presented. So your questions will be answered. There are a couple of ways you can do. You can chat or you can raise your hand. 2 ways. You can put your question in the chat window, or live you can ask the question by your mic. So your choice. We'll open when the time comes. In between, if you have any doubt on particular topic, please put in the chat window. We'll try to coordinate that with the speaker during his time. Maybe he sees he can answer. I'll send a way to tell him to answer during his presentation. So let's run into the first topic about stimulus package from the government. Goes to Matthews Garu. Matthews, please tell a few words about you, and you can get into
okay. Good evening. My name is Matthews Chako. I want to thank the TCA and its directors for this webinar and giving us an opportunity to be part of it. I'm a CPA by profession, and I have 2 offices here, one on Burnett Road and one on Cedar Park. And yeah, that's about me. And, as we have, 3 more speakers, I'll not waste the time. I'll just get into the topic now. My topic is a stimulus package. The stimulus package, it has been given by COAS Act, and the COAS Act is Corona Aid Relief Economics Security Act, signed by the President to give relief for the individuals and business affected by COVID. Um, According to the package, each and every US resident will get $1,200, and the kid will get, or the dependent will get $500. So if you have a family of three married, you should get 2,400 plus $500, which is $2,900. But there are some restrictions for this. So, not resort, sorry, there are some conditions for this. Who is eligible for the stimulus check? You have to be a US resident. US resident means citizen, green card holders, resident aliens. We have a lot of resident aliens in our city. Basically, for H1B and L1, they also are eligible for that. But if some of the resident aliens, they have social security number, but their wife doesn't have social security number. So in that case, they are not eligible. And if you and your wife has social security number, your kid has a ITIN, still you and your wife, you are eligible for that $1,200. So that's the only condition which they have put in. Unfortunately, if if you have SSN and your spouse has a ITIN, you are not eligible for the stimulus check. And the next condition is if you are a single taxpayer, if your income is below $75,000, you will receive the full 1,200. But if your income is above 75,000 and between $99,000, you will get part of the stimulus check. But for each and every $100, they will deduct $5 for the stimulus payment. Let's get into the family. For the family, can we get before that? Sorry. Yeah, for the family, it's $150,000, and if your income is below that, you will get the $2,400 full. But if your income is above $150,000 and less than $98,000, you will get a part of the stimulus amount. If we go to the next slide, before that, okay, so let's say that your income is $180,000. Family income is $180,000. So you are greater by that first limit of $150,000. So how they will do is they will see how much you are greater than $150,000. They will take that $30,000, the $30,000 divided by 100 into 5. So you are going to lose that $1,500. So you are entitled for $2,400. They are seeing that your income is more than 150. They do that calculation and deduct that $1,500, and what you will receive is $900 only. If you have dependents below 17, you will still receive $500, but same, that income calculation which we have shown before, that is still applicable. There is a small tax tip. If your dependent is above 17 and he's got some income working somewhere, if this year, if he can file separately, not as a dependent, he may be entitled for 1,200 stimulus check. But keep in mind, as a family, you will lose that $500 dependent credit. And if the dependent is going to a university and if you are entitled for education credit, then you better not do that. Just if your income is about $200,000 combined income, and if you are not going to get that education credit, then, and if your dependent has worked somewhere, you can make him file separately, and he will be entitled for 1,200 stimulus credit. So a lot of questions came. Some people got stimulus credited to their bank account, some did not get. So what IRS followed is whoever has got a refund from your 2018 tax return, or you filed your 2019 tax return before March with a refund, then what they are doing is they are directly depositing that stimulus amount to your account. In case if you owe money to IRS in 2018 or 2019, they will not put that money in your bank account, but they are going to send the check by mail. There are almost 60 million people who are going to get the check by mail from this week, and they will mail 5 million checks a week. So there is a possibility that you will definitely get your stimulus check if you owe money to IRS last year or in 2019. If you have filed your tax return before March 2019, you are going to get the check, but it's going to take some time. It's 5 million checks in a week. So you can see that 60 million people have to get it. So that it's a 12 weeks of, it will take 12 weeks time for IRS to mail the checks.
3 months.
Yeah, for senior citizens who are getting social security benefits, most of them, they have an account set up with IRS, so they can get they are also entitled for the stimulus payment. And those who have very low income and they have not filed their tax return, IRS has created a website where you can go and add your bank details. So IRS can send you through your bank, or they will send you by mail through stimulus check. So the other benefits of CARES Act is you can, everybody knows that, people are in a difficult situation. So they have allowed you to withdraw $100,000 from your 401k as loan if you want. Not loan, you can take that amount. There is no 10% penalty. But keep in mind, this will be added to your income and it is taxable. But they have put a condition that whatever you take from your 401k and it's taxable, they are giving you 3 years time to pay that tax. Student loans, they are postponed until September 13th with no penalty and interest. So you can also apply for unemployment. If you are unemployed, your state will pay you unemployment benefits. I know a lot of clients, they own their own company, they do contract, they do cop to cop work with vendors. They are, if their contract is terminated, they will qualify for unemployment. But the state is making sure that the last 4 quarters you had payroll and you have filed with the state for unemployment taxes, or you have paid unemployment taxes. So a lot of clients are facing problems because they in between discontinued their payroll and they did not file the taxes with the state. So some issues are going on, but if you have filed all the previous 4 quarters with the state, you are entitled for the unemployment. But if you are on W-2, you don't have to worry. The company which you are working with, they have already filed your unemployment taxes. So let's say if they let you go, then you are entitled for it. There are some benefits for the business. There are 3 main programs which came for the business. One is a Paycheck Protection Program. One is the $10,000 grant to small business. One is the SBA loan. So the most popular one is the Paycheck Protection Program for business. If they had employees, you will get this Paycheck Protection Program loan. How they calculate is, let's say you have $120,000 paid salary and benefits to employees. They will divide it by 12, multiply it by 2.5. So you can get a 25,000 loan from SBA, and this is forgivable if you use 75% of the loan to pay employees and 25% for rent, utilities and interest. So SBA has already completed the first portion of it. The second portion got approved by Senate last week. So now the banks are still taking applications. But my opinion is, don't go with big banks. Try to go with small banks or private lenders. So if you have a business, you can get a portion of that loan which has been approved. So the $10,000 grant was the first one which came to everybody, and 4 million business applied for this $10,000 grant, and suddenly SBA thought, hey, this is not a good idea. And what I think they are trying to see, that they are trying to make all the businesses go through the PPP loan. And some of the business, which I applied almost for 35 business, which I know, which do business with me, 2 or 3 already got a grant. They got a grant, and it's not $10,000. What they are doing is they are seeing how many employees you have in the business, and according to that, they are giving $1,000 per employee, and some of the business already got the grant. So that is another thing which is part of the CARES Act. And the next is the SBA loans. The SBA is offering loans for small business. They have to complete an application, and the interest is very good, 2 to 3.5%, 3.75%, and they will cover the loan payments, including principal, interest, and fees for 6 months. The only problem with SBA I've seen is, your income statement should be good for the last 2-3 years. You should be showing profit in your business. Then only they approve the loans. If you're showing continuously loss, then you will have difficulty in getting SBA loans. So this is a good option. If your business is making good profit, you can get into that. Well, thank you very much. I finished my stimulus package, and yeah.
Thank you, Matthew. One question on your topic. I know you kind of addressed, but quick question.
Yeah.
Do you know, everybody received in Texas the stimulus check? Personally, I received myself, but do you have any data?
Yeah.
If somebody's waiting for it, they're going to expect soon, or it's already paid to entire Texas?
Yeah, as I mentioned, whoever got refund in 2018 or filed tax return in 2019 before March, if they are getting a refund, the stimulus amount is directly credited to their bank account. But if they owe IRS in 2018 or 2019, IRS will be mailing the check to the taxpayers. But as I said, there are conditions. Your income has to be less than $200,000 to get the stimulus check.
All right. Thank you so much. Let me share one more time. All right. Thanks again. Now we have our second topic by Mr. Guru. It is about tax filing deadlines. I'll quickly open his slides. So, Guru Garu, please go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Venkat. Hi, everyone. Good evening. So, everybody at home, I guess. Sorry to meet you all through Zoom. In fact, we missed Ugadi, right, Venkat?
Yeah, already we missed it.
Okay. Anyway, so I'm here to give some more information related to tax deadlines and foreign compliance. So I go by Guru. I'm enrolled agent. My office on 183 and Andersonville Road. So you can visit our website. So let's move on, Venkat. So yeah, you can go to the next slide. So since COVID affected everyone, IRS decided to they extended the deadlines. Individual and the corporation, they extended to July 15th, and moreover, they are not charging any interest and penalties, even though there is a tax due for all 1040 individuals, corporations, trust. So if they are ending paying any taxes, and we no need to pay any taxes, or we no need to file any extended forms to extend to July 15th. But March 15th deadline is not moved, which is corporations and partnerships. By the time we filed even extensions for all our clients as well, whoever supposed to file. And also they extended IRA or HSA contributions if you're not covered by any retirement from your employers or HSA, you can still contribute. We can see the eligibility criteria while filing your taxes, and you can still contribute to the HSA as well IRA by July 15th. And first quarter and the second quarter, the estimated taxes due also July 15th. Sorry, there is a typo here. So, and there is no limitation on the total tax payment, tax postponed. Before they were telling about a million and below million, they have to pay, but there is no limitation to pay the tax and without penalties. So you can still file and pay your taxes by July 15th. But I suggest, so if you are getting any refund, don't delay it till July 15th, because IRS is not delaying any refunds. They are processing. If you are supposed to get a refund, you file and they will process your refund within 10 business days or something. I cut next slide. So most of them know, I think so, foreign bank account report is required. US citizens, US green card holders or residents must file foreign bank report, and worldwide income is taxable. So if you are missing or if you are not filing, at least from this year, you please make sure you check all your accounts, foreign accounts especially. File your FBAR. The threshold is $10,000 or more. If you had foreign assets, you have to file the FBAR. And there is another additional form, which is FATCA. So that is also you need to file if your thresholds are below. We mentioned has year single if you are above 75,000 during the year, or year end if you had highest balance by end of the year 50,000, you are supposed to file FBAR form. So aggregate value, it will come all the financial accounts. No real estate values need to add to the FBAR, but all aggregated your mutual funds, savings account, checking accounts, or if you had any signature authority in different banks along with your dad, mom, or any joint accounts, all will come to the FBAR rule. So you have to file all, it's only information reporting. You no need to pay tax on the net worth. But if you had any interest earned by any financial account, you have to include in your US tax return and pay tax. If you already paid any taxes, we can claim the foreign tax credit too. So between US and India, there is a treaty benefit. So you no need to worry. You are paying more tax. Next slide, Venkat. So there are additional forms. Indian mutual funds are taxable. Those come under passive foreign investment rule. So if you have to file a additional form, it's called PIFIC, and you need to pay any growth you had in the financial assets like mutual funds, and even sometimes say there are insurances, right? So those are ULIP plans. Those also will come under PFIC plan. So be careful and let's plan. If you are not getting much growth, it's better to liquidate in India or any country outside. So it's not worth it to maintain because the paperwork is too much. So it's always better to plan and reduce your mutual funds if you're not getting really good money, because the compliance part is more critical than maintaining and getting the income. And also gifts. So if you are giving gift within years, you have to file regular form. If it is more than $15,000, if you are gifting to your kids apart from your spouse, so you have to disclose 15,000 more if you gifted. So we have to include with your personal tax return. If you get gift or inherited property from any foreign person, so clearly I'm saying foreign person, if you received, if it is more than 100K, you have to disclose those assets, saying that you received so and so asset in the year, either asset or equivalent value of the liquidation. So it's always better to report. The reason, say for example, you got one property inherited. So say it is a 100K. Say your parents bought it very long back for 20,000. But today, because of the inheritance, you got it for say fair market value 100K or more. So if you report to IRS will have the records. Tomorrow, if you sell the property, you can save the capital gains, and you can show that this is the proof you got the inheritance in the year. So if the value is more than 100K, I suggest to report this. So keep it in mind, if you received any property or money from any person from outside US, it's better to file these forms along with your 1040. Oh, I think so. Mr. Matthew already covered, so we can move to. Thank you, Venkat and the TCA. So I'm ready to take the questions.
Thank you, Guru Garu. Questions actually after the presentation. I have one quick question to conclude you. I'm asking everybody to you. So you said about the ULIP plans for the mutual funds back home, like maybe India.
Yeah.
So do you think like if you have something in life insurance, like a lot of private banks in India doing life insurances, you don't get any during the term of the insurance, maybe 10, 15 years, you are just covered for the life insurance. One of the advantages, what I heard is there is no tax from Indian government after the term of the life insurance. You get all the money back. Do you think it is also easy to maintain, or you don't?
No, I won't say all the insurances are unit plans. There are some plans, they are unit plans, like Aditya Birla or ICICI Bank. They are doing through unit plan policies, I guess. It's better to review your policies, and if those will come under unit plans, those will come under this rule.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks, Guru. Appreciate it. The next speaker is Manohar Garu. Manohar, please. Due to the rush, he couldn't able to prepare well slides like before speakers, but he got his own points. He's going to tell us. Please introduce yourself and start your thing. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, TCA and board members, everybody, for giving me this opportunity. Reaching me in the last minute, I appreciate that. Your thought of including me in this panel. Good evening, everyone. I'm a new person to Austin. I was in Boston for a long time. I came here 2 years ago. Still, I did not get a chance to meet most of you, but this is a good opportunity. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. So now, I know there is some small correction in the foreign complaints by individual. That's not my topic. I'm actually giving some few tax law changes. That's what it's supposed to be, but it's okay. Yeah. I'm going to just highlight some of the tax law changes that came from TCGA Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, I'm going to say that new tax law from now. So which is most of the time is effective from 2018. We call it also Trump tax law. So there are so many changes, but few changes we can talk. Very simple ones. First of all, if you talk about the standard deduction, we all know that it is 24,400 now, and either we can take the standard deduction or we can take itemized deductions, which is also called Schedule A. So anything that if anybody getting more in itemized deductions, which is more than 24,400, so it is usually good for the taxpayer to take the Schedule A. So in that Schedule A, Trump tax law has made so many changes. For example, they brought SALT, state and local taxes. That before we used to deduct all the real estate taxes you pay and your income taxes you pay to the state. Of course, we are lucky here in Texas, we don't have income tax, but we do have higher property taxes. So all those taxes are limited to 10,000. Before it was not limited to 10,000. If it is like say 30,000 or 40,000, you are going to get all the 40,000 before. Now it's limited to 10,000. Similarly, the mortgage interest you pay, before it was 1 million on the mortgage loan plus additional $100,000 home equity loan. Now they reduced it. They eliminated the home equity loan completely. They restricted to $750,000 if you're filing married jointly. If you're filing separately or single, 375,000 is the loan value. So any interest you pay up to that loan amount, you can deduct. Say if you have $1 million loan, a mortgage loan, your interest paid is going to be reported on 1098 form, but your accountant or your tax program will calculate proportionately and limits to $750,000 loan value. That is two major changes, but there are other small changes, casualty and theft losses. It used to be casualty and theft losses, you were able to deduct that before the Trump tax law. Now they have eliminated, but some still, any federal disaster, declared disaster, apply, federally declared disaster losses can be still deducted. That is very rare anyway. Another deduction that they have eliminated is miscellaneous itemized deductions, which is called 2% subject to AGI, that completely eliminated. If you say that a lot of employees working from home, they were able to deduct that home office deduction, things like that. Now that is gone. It is not available. Then another, on the same Schedule A, there was another overall limitation of higher income taxpayers. If people are making $350,000 and more, they had a reduction on the total amount of the Schedule A by 3%. That has been eliminated, which is a good thing for all of us. So those are the main things that in the Schedule A, we can see the changes. Now, I'm going to be highlighting some of the married filing jointly versus married filing separately. A lot of our clients, our Indian clients, they ask us, sir, can I file married filing separately? I'm going to, because of this $10,000 limit, a lot of people got creative, but it is not going to be easy to file married filing separately and get more benefit. It's always good to file joint return, get more deductions. Some of the things that you may lose if you prefer to file married filing separately, I will point out some of the main things that they may not qualify for. Tuition and fee deduction, that you can't deduct it if you file separately. Student loan interest deduction, education saving bond interest exclusion, that is a Series E bonds, any savings bonds for educational purposes. If you redeem, the interest portion is taxable, but if you pay that for the tuition, they exclude that. But that you will be losing that if you file separately. And then lifetime learning credit, which is 20% of the first 10,000, you will lose that also. And a good deduction, which American Opportunity Credit, which is $2,500, you also lose that if you file separate tax return. So it's married filing jointly is the good way to go to get these credits. Another good credit is earned income credit, which also going to be lost if you prefer to file separate tax return while married. So these are the main things that you may lose. And also, one of the things is traditional IRA and Roth IRA. To contribute that to that $7,000 now with the catch up, your income limit will be only 10,000 rather than it should have been 180,000 to 199,000 phase out. If you prefer to file separate return, you lose that. So you 10,000, everybody makes more than 10,000. So you are not going to be able to contribute to traditional and Roth IRA. Then there are other things like, passive loss exception. There is $25,000 passive losses, rental income losses. One can deduct, subject to their income should be 150,000 and less. But if you prefer to file separate tax return, you lose that also. Then now everybody is working from home. I already mentioned that 2% AGI slab miscellaneous deductions has been eliminated, and this will affect that also. Home office deduction, a lot of people who are working from home now, they're wondering, can I write off this in the tax return? Buying a laptop, buying a camera, all kinds of stuff to make sure that they can comfortably work from home. Those expenses are not deductible because that 2106 form for unreimbursed employee expenses has been eliminated for these people, but still the form is available for some other people, not for this type of taxpayers. And of course, don't get confused. Home office can be still deductible if you have a business and filing Schedule C, so you still can deduct that. There's a way to take a safe harbor way, $5 per square foot. If you're using one bed, like one room, 200 square foot, for example, $1,000 you can take deduction for that. That's a safe way to go, not to get audited by IRS. Now there's another one we can talk about, solar energy credit. The solar energy credit, a lot of people, they want to install the solar panels on the roof. So this credit is available for both individuals and businesses. So right now they can say if they install $30,000 worth of panels, 30% of it can be given as a credit. So this year for 19 it's 30%. Next year it's going to be 26%. Year after it's going to be 22%. And then after that, residential energy credit is gone. No more credit unless they pass the law again. For businesses, they can get still 10% of it after 2021. So remember, 30% this year, next year 26, year after 22% for individuals. After that, 10% only for businesses. So you have to file that 5695 form and you can get the credit. Of course, if your tax liability, say in the example I gave you, $9,000 you get on 30,000 installation of equipment. If your tax liability is only 7,000, for example, you have only 7,000 will be offset on that liability, and the remaining 2,000 you can carry forward to the next year. You won't get that as a refund. It cannot be refunded. It can be only carry forward to the next year. Now there is another change in the situations like divorced taxpayers. Alimony, usually before the tax law change, it was deductible for the payer. After the tax law changes, it is not deductible for the taxpayer, and of course the receiver don't have to pay tax as well. It's a simple thing, but just want to throw that there. Then another important thing is 529 plans. This before TCJA, that is the tax, Trump tax law, we all know that it's a good plan, but even better with the Trump tax law, they allowed $10,000 can be taken to pay kindergarten to senior high school tuition. Before that, it was not available in the 529 plans. It was available another ESA, Educational Savings Account, Cordell plans like that. But Cordell plan has only $2,000 contribution limit. Every year you can only contribute 2,000 versus 529 plan, you can contribute 100,000 also. So that's a better way to go to have 529 plan. If somebody has already established another ESA plan, they can still roll over that money to 529 plans. Remember that before it has to be for the children. If you set up for the children, like you have two children, like you set up for two accounts, you can pay either one. You can draw the money from one account and pay the other student, other kid. Now you can use that money for parents also. If they end up going to school, they can draw the money and pay the tuition, their own money. And so those are the main things that we can talk about on 529 plan. Then we can go to the required minimum distributions, which is a little bit more, I don't know how many people were looking at this situation, but people like us who are close to retirement, we need to think about it. Also, some people may be already taking RMDs. So the RMDs apply for all the tax deferred retirement accounts, traditional IRAs, rollover IRAs, simple IRAs, SEP IRA, most business, small business accounts, 401ks and 403b plans. This year, because of the COVID, no RMDs for 2020. So you don't have to worry about drawing the 4% minimum RMD for 2020. Again, the age also has been increased from 70 and a half years to 72 years. No limit for contributing to traditional IRA. See, before the change of the law, the people who has RMD requirements still can contribute to Roth IRA, but not for traditional IRA. Now they are allowed to contribute to traditional IRA as well. It's a good thing that people can be still working after 72. Still they can put some money in traditional IRA or Roth IRA. Of course, Roth IRA is the better one. And if somebody misses the RMD, if they did not take enough or they forgot to take, it's just a steep penalty, 50% of the amount not taken from the RMD. So that's a very a big penalty. So please keep in mind, you need to meet the requirement. Otherwise, you will be paying 50%. If somebody did not take, say, even $10,000 that they're supposed to take, there is a 5,000 penalty on the 10,000, which is really big money. So then some people can use this if they want to give a charitable donation. They can direct this as a qualified charitable distribution directly from their retirement account to their preferred charity, a charitable organization, and that can be counted towards, that will be counted towards their minimum requirement distribution. Say if you have to draw $50,000 as a minimum requirement distribution, you prefer to give $20,000 to a TCA, you can give that $20,000 to TCA, and that will be counted towards your 50,000. The remaining 30,000, if you take that as a minimum requirement distribution, that means you met the total 50,000. And again, of course, this 20,000 will be useful for you to lower your tax liability because you're getting a deduction through Schedule A. Then we can talk about inherited IRAs. This is another thing that we'll be getting questions. Sometimes spouses pass away, and they get that retirement account transferred. They have, they are also required to draw that money. There are rules for that, but there is a five-year rule, 10-year rule. 5-year rule applicable if the person died before reaching 70 and a half and before 2019. But after 2019, which is after January 1st, 2020, 10-year rule applies. That means they have to draw the money from that RMD within 10 years. But if it is the spouse gets that inherited account, the 5 and 10-year rule doesn't apply for the spouse. It applies only for the non-spouse with your kids and others, and the trust if there is any trust established. Then we can move to the next one is net operating losses, which is a big change before the tax law and after the tax law. Prior to tax law changes, any net operating losses can be carried forward to the 20 years carry forward, only 2 years carry backward. Now they have limited that. They have taken out the carry backward provision. You can only carry forward, but indefinitely. You can carry forward as long as you want to. But there is a limit on using the future profit up to 80% only. That means if say next year we got like 100,000 profit, you have a $200,000 loss a year before. So if you want to offset that 200,000, before it was 100%, now it is only 80%. 80% of your 100,000 is 80,000. So your 200,000 loss, you can take that 80,000 and then 120,000 loss still can be carried forward to the next year. Then they made another change because of the COVID. The losses occurred in 2020, 2019, and 2018. They have made a little exception for the previous rule. Remember that in the past, it used to be carried backward 2 years. Now they made it for these 3 years, any loss occurred can be carried backwards up to 5 years. Again, it's only for these 3 years, 2018, 2019, and 2020. You can carry backward up to 5 years and offset your previous profits from these losses. And then otherwise, if you prefer not to carry backward, if you want to carry forward, that's up to you as a taxpayer. And on the NOL, so that is mainly the tax law changes on the NOL, but there is another good deduction that everybody may aware of this thing, Qualified Business Income Deduction, QBID, section 199A they call it. This is like if people have businesses, you can have a Schedule C or partnership or S corporation. All these entities, all these businesses are flow-through entities. So they made this 20% business income deduction because everybody knows that Trump wants to lower the corporate taxes. They were 35%. Now they brought it to 21%. So that is why they made this thing available for individuals also or other businesses also, which they have a flow-through entities with, you have a S corporation. S corporation doesn't pay taxes. Any profit or loss should be carried to your individual tax return 1040. That's where you're going to be taking this 20% deduction on the income from these businesses. There are some, complex calculations on that, but I will try to make it, because there is no slide, it's not going to be easy, but I'll try to see if I can make it a little bit of, some examples. Again, talking about QBID, which is Qualified Business Income Deduction, there are two categories that IRS divided. There are specified services, trade, and businesses. They call it SSBT. Then qualified trades and businesses. Now, for example, some of the professions like healthcare, like physicians, dentists, doctors, law profession, accounting, CPS, actuarial science, performing arts, consulting, athletics, all these things are going to be specified services. So the reason why I'm insisting on SSTB, which is specified services, trade and businesses, I'll let you know why. Because there is an income limitation for taking this 20% deduction. The income limitations are like this. If anybody making the threshold limits, they call income limits, 315,000. If anybody making joint return, 315,000. If it is a separate tax return or single, 157,000. If anybody making less than that threshold, they will get full 20% of business income. Say if they made $100,000, and the $20,000 will be deducted, the remaining 80,000 will be added to the income. There are some calculations for that, but I will let you know in a minute. For the specified services professions, if they have made more than 415,000, they get zero. No deduction for doctors, accountants, lawyers, these professions. If they make more than 415,000, there is no QBID deduction for them. For all others, they still get that, but proportionately it will be reduced because of the income limitations and phase out limitations. So this is how some of the formulas like this. If income is exceeded 315,000, but below 415,000, stays 415,000, those who are filing joint return. If they have 50%, they have a wages from the business, 50% of wages or 25% of the wages plus 2.5% of qualified property used in the business. Remember, qualified property used in the business. Simply, if you say you are a real estate owner, you are doing some real estate business, you have 2 apartments or 2 buildings, that value, not adjusted value, it's the full value. 2.5% of that value can be added to 25% of the wages. Say wages is 100,000, 25% of that is 25,000, and then add the value of 2.5% of the value of, say, $1 million. So that you can add that to $25,000 there. So 25 to 25 is 50,000. Your QBID 20% calculation on the business income should be limited to 50% of the wages. So it's not supposed to be more than that. It's a little bit of complex calculation, but don't worry, it will be handled by your accountant. But I'm just throwing you this calculation simply without providing you a slide, which is, I'm sorry about that. So remember that anybody making 315,000 below, they will get full 20%. If they're making 315 and above, that 20% will be reduced according to the phase out calculations. So those are the main things that I want to discuss this evening. I know the time is limit, but if any questions, we can talk about later on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manohar. Before we go, quick question. If Trump is not going to be there next year, do you think like Congress is going to change this, what is so-called tax?
These laws that we talked about are up to 2025. The good question, if he loses this election and say Biden comes back, and then they have to go through the Congress anyway. So the Congress has to reverse these laws and make effective from 2021. So all these laws that we read, the Trump tax laws, are valid from 18 to 25, 2018 to 25.
All right. Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Chandrakala Garu. She is a licensed CPA as well as licensed real estate mortgage lender. Chandrakala, you can start. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Andy. Hi everyone. Good evening. This is Chandrakala. I'm an enrolled agent and also a loan officer. My office is here in Cedar Park, Chandra Tax Services. And today I'll be covering, COVID-19 impact on mortgages. So how COVID-19, as you all know, President Trump has signed the CARES Act on March 27, and this allows homeowners with federally backed mortgage loans can get a forbearance up to 180 days, from 180 days to 360 days. And what forbearance does is, like, if you can call your lender and ask them for to reduce your mortgage payment or to suspend your mortgage payments for a while. That can be up to from 6 months to 1 year. Then once after your forbearance time ends, you can start paying it back. You can pay it as a lump sum amount, or you can make it extra payments with your regular payments after the forbearance period. And or else you can make a complete modification with the lender and ask them to add those payments back to your loan, so you have more time to pay. And that's, and we can move on to the next slide. That's what it is doing. And the next one. So as you all know, with the COVID-19 effect, mortgage industry has changed a lot, and the Treasury, with the volatility in the stock market, Treasury rates are low right now. So if the Treasury rates are low, the fixed mortgage rates will be low, and if you see the yields on the Treasury rates are low. That's why the fixed mortgage rates are low right now. So today's rates, as you can see, for 30 and 15 years, 30 years is about 3.375, and for 15 years it's around 3.125 with a FICO score of 740. Then with this effect, even the lenders have made a lot of changes. There are so many layovers. If you are applying, if you are in the process of doing a refinance or buying a new home, the lenders are looking at a lot of other things, like they're more diligent on their side, looking at your Venkat Garu, if you can move to the next slide, Ali. So there are so many layovers. Before, it used to be that your debt to income ratio, if your FICO score is more than 680, your debt to income ratio used to be 50%. Now they're looking at 40%. So if your FICO score is less than 680, it's hard to get loans now. And if it is more than 680 also, they're looking at the DTI 40%. They're looking at that you have to have reserves at least for 3 months of payments. That includes your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And if it is an investment property, you need to have reserves for at least 6 months for your monthly payments. And all the borrowers have to provide, the paychecks, the most recent paycheck on the closing date. Also, they are verifying your most recent paycheck on the closing date. And it's even tougher for self-employed borrowers to get loans now. They have to reduce your self-employment by 15% to qualify, and you also have to have 6 months of reserves. If it is just for self-employment income, you have to document your reserves up to 12 months. And I think with this, and it's taking more time to close the loans, but with all this the delays everywhere, so it's at least now 30 days to 45 days minimum to close the loan. That's what all I wanted to cover today. And of course, I think since we're talking about real estate, 1031 exchange. 1031 exchange is also have extensions. People who can identify. Before it used to be 45 days to 180 days, that you have to identify the property, and within 6 months you have to do the exchange. Now it's if your dates and those dates fall before April 1st, between April 1st to July 15th, you have until July 15th to identify the exchange property exchanges. So, that date has extended to July 15th. That's all. That's all I wanted to cover with the mortgages. And that's my contact info if you want to contact me.
Thank you, Chandrakala Garu. One question is from the interest rate is so low, but the charter is it's actually going up and down every day. People are saying sometimes it's going to up to 2%, but next day it's rising back to 3.5 for 30 or 15 years. What do you think the reason is, and do you think in short term this is going to stabilize? We're going to get much lower in a refinance?
So this depends on, because the rates, the fluctuation is because of course the stock market and treasury rates have changed. That is one reason, and because of so much activity, the lenders are also not willing to buy the new loans. They want their time, so they are not changing the loan rates. Interest rates have not change. Maybe in future, definitely once all this goes down, they will be changing. I think the interest rates will still go down in comparison. So it's because of the current market, the way they are busy right now. I think they're not taking any more loans, and also the fluctuation in the market.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate your time taking and explaining about this thing. Now we are open for question and answers. You can post your questions in the chat or raise your hand. I can open your mic also. You can ask the question. Any of our professional will answer you. They're all well qualified for any tax related or home mortgage refinance or anything. Prakash ji, aap kuch hai, ya I know you are taking notes and everything.
I believe only my question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
So the extended deadline for the tax return is July 15. Is it same rule for SEP IRA? Is extended like the business people? They can put money in SEP IRA until now, July 15?
Yeah.
Yes, Prakash.
As far as I have read, is a 401k and SEP IRA, it's extended till July 15th.
Okay.
Yes, Prakash.
Just to addition to that, remember, if you are filing the tax return S corporation or you're filing extension, that includes extension time. So you still have the time if you file extension all the way to October.
Yes.
If still somebody is not able to file by July 15th, still they can extend the SEP IRA. It will extend to October 15th.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we have a few questions. They give me privately. I'll read one by one. One from Raj. He was our executive committee member. Thank you, Raj. This question is: FATCA can be filed along with FBR by October 15th.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes, Raj. FATCA and FBAR also. See, FATCA, it has to go with the federal return. FBAR default extension is October 15th if you are not able to file before.
Right. Thank you. One question on the from Raj itself on the mortgage sections. Can the mortgage payments can be pushed out even if it is not primary residence? Chandrakala garu.
Yes, I think yes. You can. It can be pushed out. You need to talk to the lender and make that forbearance plan. It can be pushed out.
Correct. If you have a business loan, if you have a real estate, that's a business, those loans you can postpone. Any business loan, any real estate loan, any mortgage loans can be postponed. 60 days as of now, to my knowledge, but when we called for our loans to postpone, and the lender told me that right now they are thinking about 60 days, but there is a possibility to extend to 6 months.
It depends on the lender, so we need to talk to the lender, and you need to talk to the lender. But yes, you can postpone it.
All right. One tough question for all four of you. It is from Mr. Sridhar. If I had to pick one of you as my CPA, who would be the best one and why?
It's a really difficult question.
I know.
It's better to have one-on-one. Then you can decide.
Actually, I want to answer.
Put in a cup, pick one.
Yeah, Sridhar garu, all are very professional. So we recommend anybody you can pick. Maybe it depends where you live. Maybe you want to go and meet. Maybe that depends, but everyone is the best. Many of us actually goes to one of these folks here.
Yeah, we are available even now through Zoom or online meeting. If you want to talk, please write to us. We'll definitely discuss and you can choose. Good question, by the way.
All right. One non-immigrant question from Mr. Baduri, sorry. Thanks, TCA, for the session. You're welcome. For non-immigrants, do we need to pay taxes in both India and USA?
Yeah, foreign, since you are living in this country as a resident, you have to include worldwide income. It may be interest income or rental income. So sometimes rental income, I will say it is advantage. You can, if you are managing from here, you please report the rental income. If you even travel, you can at least, if you visit the place, you can claim 30-40% of your travel cost as your expense. That makes sense, right? You can make a record. So, and also there is no double taxation. If you are paying in India and here, there is a difference. So foreign tax, it's prorated with the foreign tentative tax versus regular tax. So whichever benefit you can get it, and whatever excess is not able to claim, we can carry forward always. So there is no loss.
All right. We have one more question from KV Shah. Regarding stimulus package, I have received stimulus package as per my dependent details in 2018 returns. My son is born in 2019. I have filed 2019 returns in April. Would he be receiving the child credit now? We are all having assistance.
Regarding the $500 dependent credit, we may have to talk to IRS and find out whether they will apply that credit for him. But presently, IRS offices most of the the professional line and the paper filing section, ITIN filing section, everything is closed now. So I'm pretty sure they will open up a helpline in the future, and we can address this and see whether Mr. Shah can get that $500 credit for his dependent.
And also, we no need to worry. Stimulus check, if you are qualified and if you have not received now, some reason, you can claim through your 2020 tax filing as a credit.
Yeah.
For Matthew J, I've seen so much chatter about non-immigrants receiving a stimulus package. Suppose he's not eligible and they received it. What is the best way he or she can do with that money? Like how to send it back to IRS or keep it hold? Or basically, what is tax suggestion?
You know, when you say non-immigrant receiving stimulus check, that has to be somebody on a F1, on a student visa or J1 visa. But the others are entitled. If you see somebody on H1 or on L1 visa, they are entitled. They are resident aliens in this country and they are paying taxes. So they are entitled for it. So we just have to check and see, what category they are in. And if they are saying they are non-resident aliens are entitled for stimulus check. And
yeah, sorry, I kind of wrongly phrased the question. I rephrase again.
okay.
Person knows he's not eligible for sure. Means he met not meeting the minimum criteria to get the stimulus check, but still somehow mistakenly they received it. What is the best way they can do to avoid any future immigration problems?
I mean, it's just, you just have to return the money. Maybe you just have to make a small amendment to your tax return saying that I'm not entitled for the stimulus check. I'm returning the check and put the amount, enclose your check and send it back, But yeah, that's all I can say.
So don't cash it. If it is not deposited directly to the bank, don't cash it. Return the check to
Yes.
IRS. Call the IRS, which is always good to call the IRS. Right now, like Matthew mentioned, you're not going to be able to get to the call, but eventually 2-3 months later, you can still call them. Don't cash the check, just return the money. If it's already deposited in the bank, then you can call 3 months later and then discuss with them, see how you can return the check.
All right. Whoa, we are many questions now from Ms. Jyoti. Team, thanks for the session. Is forbearance is good. I came to wonder they will charge interest, it seems. Let me know it's a good option or not.
I would say if you are able to pay your mortgage payments, you can pay. This is for people who cannot pay. Of course, they will add the interest and all the payments will be added back to your loan and you have to make the payment and interest will be accruing to that. So it's, it's not a good option, but if you don't have any other option, you're not in a position to pay, you can ask for forbearance, but yes, interest will be accrued. It will become more expensive for you. Yeah, if you can afford it, you can pay. Otherwise, yeah, forbearance is good option if you are not in a position to pay. But if you are in a position to pay, it's better you pay off your monthly payment.
All right. Thank you, Chandraprabhu. We have one from our own treasurer, Kishore Garu. If one qualifies for COVID stimulus check based on 2018 tax return, but not on 2019 tax return, not filed, will they take back the money received when you do 2020 taxes?
No.
No, in that case, no. If you have received a stimulus check based on 2018, you have received that funds. Even if you filed in 2019 with a higher income, they are not going to take back that money back from you.
Okay. Thank you. I think one more from Prakashji. Prakashji, I'll open your mic. Go ahead and ask. It's much better.
Yes, but the news, Matthew, the news says we have to return the stimulus check if the income exceed and if we don't qualify when we file 2019 tax return.
No, there is nowhere they have mentioned that they will take it back. I mean, they are basing it now on 2018 returns, and those who have filed their returns before March for 2019. Once you receive the check, you don't have to give it back. They're not
So
going to.
once you receive, it's yours, right? That's what you
It's, yeah, it's yours. Yeah.
say.
I mean, later on, a lot of people are now filing for 2018 and 19 who they have not filed so far, and a lot of people, I know they forgot to put the SSN for their wife. They were continuing with IU. Now they are putting the SSN and they are amending the return. So
Yeah.
if this will trigger an order, it will trigger an issue for IRS, then maybe they will see if you have a higher income in 2019, they may come back and say you have to return the stimulus amount, but the chances looks very less.
Okay. I have a couple of questions, Srini. Hello.
Yeah, go ahead, Prakash.
Yeah, so this is regarding 529 plan, the one we discussed, Mr. Manohar. So can we open 529 for the parents and use money for the child?
That is a good question. We don't have a specific provision saying that parent can open that. 529, you can open and put a beneficiary as a child. You can designate that child, but I would have to check that. Sorry, I'm not able to pinpoint that.
Okay, and one more question on the same. When your child turn 18 or over, and when you file separate tax return,
Yes.
not claiming as a dependent. So when the child filed for scholarship or financial aid, how they look at the asset? They still look at the asset of the parents, or it gonna only for the child?
For the child, say as you mentioned, if a child wants to go for financial aid, they will look into all resources that the child has. So if it is disclosed that they have 529 plan, it will affect their chance of getting the grant or financial aid. So it belongs to the child at that point.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Prakash. We have one from Mr. Srini. Is there any impact on credit score if you use forbearance from this act?
So it will be reported on the credit report that you have forbearance, but that will not impact your credit score. Only if you have any missed payments before this forbearance period, that will be factored, and that will impact your credit score, but not having a forbearance period will not impact your credit score.
Okay, thank you.
Chandrakala, I have a question related to the mortgage. These the 3 months gani 6 months gani delay, they are going to increase the interest rate, or how it calculates?
No, interest rate will be same. Only thing is it gets added back to your loan. And I mean, it's up to you if you want to pay it lump sum, but for whatever all these months you didn't pay, you can pay it lump sum. Or maybe with your next payment, you can make extra payments to cover these payments all these months. Or else you can you can talk to the lender and add it back to the loan.
Okay, thank you.
So, but there won't be any changes in the interest rate.
Okay.
I have one question from Mr. Ramesh Ji. We have made several donations recently to food banks, charity organizations, etc. for COVID relief, but most likely we'll be claiming standard deduction when we file 2020 returns. Is there any way to deduct these donations?
If you go for standard deduction, there's no way you can get deduction for these charities.
But if you have intended to do the charity every time, there is way you can do it, like creating your own private foundation, and you can contribute more money, and you can use those funds for the charity purpose. But that money completely for charity purpose if it is going to private foundation. Such kind of options you can look for. Say today your income is high, you want to contribute 30% of your AGF amount, that will deduct this year. But you can there is a expenditure rule in the private foundation. 5% of the worth of foundation value you have to use for charity. If you do that, that may be a good option. So we can talk more.
One question from Raj. Is the mortgage forbearance for investment property or just for primary house?
It's for all the properties. It's for primary and mortgage. Oh, sorry, the investment property.
All right. I'm in with questions now. We have some more time, so please post your question, or if you want to speak, raise your hand. I'll open the mic for you. Okay, Raj, I'll open mic. Why don't you talk? We got too many questions.
Hello?
Yeah, Raj, go ahead.
Raj.
Yeah, thank you. Gurugaru, the factor, do we have to file it along with the FBAR by October, or is it separate we need to file?
It's mandatory to file along with your personal taxes, Andy.
Okay, which is July now, right?
Yeah, whenever you are filing, yeah. But maximum October is the deadline to file your personal taxes if you extend it. FATCA should go along with your 1040.
But that's only if you extend it. Extension.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
One thing to add, and if FR goes to FinCEN, FATCA goes to IRS. You are reporting that to IRS.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So two different entities that you are reporting.
Okay.
I have a private question from Mr. AK. Don't know the full name. So question is, I believe Indian citizens can exclude Indian origin income from taxable income in US. However, when the subject individual becomes a resident, he or she cannot exclude Indian origin income. In such a case, would US allow foreign tax credit on such taxes paid in India?
Yes, foreign tax credit, you always get the foreign tax credit if you're including the foreign income on US tax return, and then you file the form 1116, take the credit for the taxes you paid in India, but sometimes you may get the 100% tax credit, whatever you paid there, or sometimes you get 80%, 60, most of the time you get 90% of the taxes you paid in India as a credit here. And I'm not sure what you're talking about exclusion. There is another, maybe you're thinking about salary that they made in India, foreign country, earned income exclusion. That you have to file form 2555 and exclude that income. That is the provision that they have, but I don't know exactly what you meant about Indian citizens. If you're Indian citizen, then you're living here, you're not a green card holder, or you're not, maybe you're a green card holder, but not US citizen, right?
Maybe your question is foreign exclusion related.
Yeah, I think AK Garu, if you can clarify, yeah, that also confusing. Like, I believe is giving a statement. I believe Indian citizens can exclude Indian origin income from taxable income in US.
No, answer is no. But US citizens or US green cards, they are working outside US. Then there is a possibility you can exclude the wage income or self-employed income. If it is more than up to 100K, I think it's more than 100K, you can exclude, but there are eligibility criteria you have to eligible. If you have more questions, you can write to us, because it's not one way to check the status.
On the same lines, I have a follow-up question. If somebody wants to transfer money from India, maybe due to they sold a property from ancestor property or investment property back days, what you guess? What is the best way, legal way to get that money into US?
Yeah, India lo most of time RBI rule and the IRS they don't have restrictions to bring the money here. It has to be after tax money, either if it is a gift or if it is say your own property or selling and bringing here, it has to be a after tax money. So there you need to estimate the taxes and file with RBI. You can contact your local CA, local India CA. They can file the 15 CA, 15 CB forms. You can keep it in mind, and they can file with the RBI, and the banks can release that fund to your own either NRE account or your US account. You can bring it.
So you're saying there is no tax in US, right? Once you brought that money?
If you say, for example, I will give you one example. To say this year you are selling some property and bringing for 2020, you have to pay the tax in US as well India, but there is no double taxation. There is a treaty. We can adjust the highest tax bracket where it will fall. You have to pay for US taxes. The India long-term capital gains around 20%, I guess. So in US also, based on your tax bracket, if you are in high bracket, you have to pay 23% based on all the other taxes. So the gap you need to pay in US, but whatever the excess tax you paid, that will carry forward.
Okay, so you're saying end of the day, you're going to pay minimum 20%.
Yes, let's flat. You can say 20%. You can keep it in mind.
Okay.
Yeah, not in US. If you already paid in India, you don't have to pay the 20% again in US. That's what good to say. Whatever excess is there, that's all you'll pay here.
Yeah, that 3% additional you have to pay.
Pay here.
So if it is a gifted from your grandpa or parents, how that will work? Say
gift
given some amount, say $50,000 as a gift to you.
If they can give directly to you with you don't need to pay any taxes. If it is more than 100K, you have to disclose to IRS saying that you received so and so property or money. Otherwise, IRS it's not mandatory.
Okay. And one final follow-up on that. We know like you can carry cash to US under 10,000 without any declaration. So what happens like you bought 10,000 somehow, 2 years, ready cash. Do you need to declare that in the next follow-up tax? Or?
Frank, it's not accountant question, sir. But as per the border rules, you can bring up to $10,000 cash, but always better to disclose on the form. Don't hide even any dollar. Please, even if you have 11,000, put it. They will ask you how you got all the sources.
Actually,
under 10,000, you don't need to declare, right?
You don't need to.
Yeah, but I would suggest declare it. You don't know, right? Sometime I heard one case. They are going from US to India. She had more than $10,000, some dollars, but she didn't mention that she's carrying cash. They asked a lot of questions and they stopped her in Houston, I guess.
It's good to disclose. I mean, like Guru mentioned, it's always good to disclose. Nothing is going to be happen if you disclose $8,000 you're carrying, $10,000 you're carrying. As long as it is disclosed, nobody is going to be bothering it with you. But no need to disclose on the tax return or anyway.
We may think only cash. They may count even the value of the other stuff. They think, see, as per the form, it's
everything.
Everything, yes.
Value,
yeah.
gift or something.
Like the same time, you're also carrying some gold jewelry. Then
correct.
Definitely,
they may add
is the 10 grand. Yeah. All right. So far, no more questions. we are close to our time. Anyone has any questions? Final. All right. We don't have any. Jyoti Garu, I see your raise the hand. Still you have a question? Raise the hand. Let me open. Yeah, you can speak, Jyoti. I think she asked one question before, maybe. All right, so.
Yeah, I think that's because of forbearance, I think. We talked
Oh,
about
okay.
it.
All right, thank you. Finally, before conclusion, we have one slide for the TCA. You can see on my screen. We have a helpline for any related to COVID-19. You can call. We'll try to address as much we can. And also, we have a very resourceful page created on our website, austintelugu.org, COVID-19 Austin resources. It gives all locally available resources you have. Actually, I can show you. So that looks some like with all links. Very resourceful. If you have any question, likely 99% this page will answer you related COVID-19. And if you want to reach us through website, we have the same. Go to austintelugu.org, contact. Also, we are collecting small donations for COVID-19, as actually we are receiving from many students for some financial help. We have a PayPal, paypal.me/TC Austin, or we are also sending mailers. You can access and contribute any amount. A little amount also sufficient. This actually we use only for COVID related, not to any other programs. And we have a very resourceful Facebook account, Telugu Austin. Feel free to add as a friend. Or we have a page, Telugu Cultural Association Austin. If you just like it, you receive all the updates. So we promise no spam, only related TC related events, programs like this, or any future events. So this is our third seminar. We want to continue during this lockdown. Likely next week, we will have one more health seminar regarding, I request our President Brahma to explain. Brahma Garu, let me unmute you. Yeah, go ahead.
So this is for, I think, kids related. If suppose they open any schools and what they are going to take precautions. If not also, like if their kids is at home, what they need to take precautions, that kind of all related things. So we will schedule that one maybe tomorrow or day after tomorrow. We'll post that one.
I think Brahma, if I'm correct, actually this is by medical professional running
Yes.
centers.
Yes.
Within Austin area.
Yes.
Right. So this is actually very useful. Like something happens due to this,
Yes.
where you want to go, maybe you can reach them directly. I think they have hospital too, right?
Yeah, I think 2-3 hospitals here.
Right. So you can actually go to those hospitals for any kind of treatment, or even for if you have some doubts with the kids. Basically, the child clinics, they will help you out.
Yeah, that's all.
All right. Once again,
Thanks
thank
again
you for
everyone.
all the support from the community, and also a big thanks to our panel members. for your time and valuable suggestions. If anybody reaches us, we will definitely send the queries back to one of you. And
Thank you
we
for
go
having
to
Thank you, Matthew, Guru, and Chandrakala and Manohar. Thank you. Thank you for your support.
yeah, we'll share this video very soon through our email, also Facebook and YouTube. So if somebody friends misses this program, please ask them to see the live video, entire program. And thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.